You're leaving the Combine? Toward House Davion? No. Towards safety. The houses, regardless of my efforts, I fear are on the verge of a war that will make the liberation of Terra seem like the golden age of war. Despite the situation, the words pulled at him, the anguish coating Kerensky's voice cascading down and around him. In the general's timbre, and the weariness that dragged down his jowls, Raymond lived the collapse of the Star League from the general's point of view. His life's work torn down and trod upon by those who could not recognize the pearls in their hands. Among Kerensky's Exodus fleet of hundreds of jump ships and thousands of drop ships, countless tons of supplies for every possible eventuality were squirreled away. From food and medical equipment to construction mechs and 100-ton atlases, the remnants of the Star League Defense Force would head out into the unknown with all of their bases covered. On some of those dropships, nestled in amongst the other tools of warfare, was a battlemech that would make its mark on the Inner Sphere during the Succession Wars, but never really caught on in popularity in a crowded pack of useful medium-weight mechs. Built to be an inexpensive yet speedy scout mech that could support lighter units with heavier weaponry, the Clint was widely produced in the 27th century and distributed in units on the edge of settled space. It wasn't a premier battlemech by any stretch of the imagination, but it did serve its purpose. The Clint was popular among those who used it and fought alongside it, but ultimately, it would never gain the gravitas of mediums like the Phoenix Hawk, Wolverine, or Hatchetman. By the end of the Succession Wars, a Comstar report included an estimate that there were no more than 200 Clints left in among the armies of the great houses of the Inner Sphere. The AC-5 autocannon was seen as a liability instead of an asset, and it wasn't a surprise when the Capellans developed a field modification kit for their Clints. It included the replacement of the AC-5 with an ER particle projection cannon. The refit, which also included double heat sinks and a couple of medium pulse lasers, breathed new life into the design. However, the Clint would still rarely be added to anyone's list of must-have designs. The few examples of the Clint that traveled within the Exodus fleet into the periphery were prototypes, and there weren't enough of them to see any real fighting across the Pentagon worlds. They ended up being packed away in a brine cache on Circe and wouldn't be rediscovered until many years later. Eventually, when the cache was reopened, Clan Snowraven jumped at the opportunity to claim the Clint as their own. These Clints were armed with a heavier Armstrong Buster autocannon, and it caused endless problems for the mech's inadequate frame. If the mech was to survive, the Ravens were going to have to make some modifications. Temporary refits of the prototypes showed that a ground-up approach was going to be necessary. The resulting battlemech, later known as the Clint 2C, would look similar to its inspiration, but on the inside it would have all the bells and whistles we've come to appreciate in the Clan 2C designs. Constructed around an SR2930B endosteel frame and a Type 81 Fusion 240XL engine, the Clint 2 has a lot more of its 40 tons to devote to other elements while still being stronger and just as fast as its inspiring cousin. With 6 Andoran Model JJ2 jump jets located in the legs and torsos, the Clint 2C can leap up to 180 meters, which is invaluable for a recon medium. The 7 tons of Forging C629J standard armor offer decent coverage on par with the Strider, but less than the other 40-ton Innersphere mechs like the Firestarter. The Ralderon R1 communication system is solid, and the Sloan 220 lockover targeting and tracking system is more than capable of handling fast-moving targets and the Clint 2C itself. It's interesting that even in the 2C version, the Sloan TNT system is retained from the original SLDF mech. The original Armstrong Buster autocannon was replaced with a Type KOV LB-10X autocannon, which added additional accuracy and flexibility of the mech's shots. Bolstering the power of the big gun, 2 Series 2D extended range medium lasers were built into the center and left torsos, to make sure that the mech would have something to shoot if it was in the fight long enough for the 4 tons of LB-10X ammunition. Now, I want to take a second to underline the fact that 4 tons of ammo for that LB-10X is 40 shots. That's a lot of ammo for a 40-ton battle mech. I guess if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound, right? I like it. During the Golden Century, the roughly 100 years following the unexpected death of Nicholas Kerensky, the clans went through an unprecedented period of growth and technological advancement. During this time, the Clint 2C was a key component to the Snow Raven 2man. Teamed up with light mechs and scouting stars, the Clint 2C could keep up with their movement and bring accurate fire down on its enemies. During the defense of the Hellgate aggro-domes in 2897, the Clint 2C would have its opportunity to shine. The planet was quite hostile to life, but it was an advantageous strategic position and contained large amounts of germanium deposits, so it was not a surprise when Clan Steel Viper laid claim to it. The Snow Ravens fought tenaciously for it. The Clint 2C was a key part of that defensive force, and reports reflect its solid performance. Though ultimately unsuccessful with their defense of the planet in 2899, the Snow Ravens would eventually return to reclaim Hellgate in 3052. Way to go, Snow Ravens. Like with so many other 2C designs, the rise of the Omni-Mech was unkind to the Clint 2C's place in the 2man. Among even the Ravens, who had a fondness for the mech, it ended up serving in second line and garrison units only. Unfortunately, while mechs like the Warhammer 2C and Marauder 2C continued to be considered much too valuable to fully send back to the second line, the Snow Ravens' limited production capacity left the Clint 2C on the chopping block. By the 2970s, the Snow Ravens were starting to considerably shift what resources they had to space naval assets. An offer from Clan Bloodspirit to trade several warships for the surplus mechs that the Ravens had on hand resulted in most of the surviving Clint 2Cs heading over to Clan Bloodspirit. While this did result in the Clint 2C seeing frontline duty again, there wasn't any new production of the battlemech. Seeing action with Clan Bloodspirit's continued feuding with the Star Adders and the Brooks gradually wore down the mechs that could not be repaired with parts in ready supply. More and more Clint 2Cs ended up being scrapped. The future looked bleak for the Clint 2C heading into the 31st century. Not included in the clan invasion, the Snow Ravens still took advantage of the operation by opening up new production lines of parts and mechs to trade to the invading clans. By 3052, the first new Clint 2Cs were being produced and sold largely to Clan Wolf and Clan Ghost Bear. Though the Jade Falcons and Steel Vipers also sought the design, the Snow Ravens refused to trade with them. As with the other 2Cs, there have been some variants and refits over the years. The Clint 2C2 was introduced in 3073, and its loadout is entirely new and it takes advantage of some new technology. The coolest new feature is the replacement of the design's original jump jets with improved jump tech. This improves the jump distance of the Clint 2C to up to 240 meters, which is awesome. The upgraded double heat sinks and ferrofibrous armor improved the mech's flexibility concerning loadouts and operations. It also allowed for the installation of 5 medium pulse lasers and an ECM suite. This made the Clint 2C2 a stealthier and extremely deadly opponent at close range. Now that did mean pulling the LB-10X, which is a shame because it's fun and a useful weapon, but I could see how the original variant and the 2C2 working together would work well in the field. If there's a downside to the 2C2, it's that you're gonna need to watch your heat a bit if you're jumping and shooting every turn. The 10 double heat sinks are almost enough to cover the heat generation, but not quite. This is fine as it's better to dance on the line than to waste a ton on a heat sink you don't really need. Other than that, the Clint 2C is great, and I happily give it the Mechfrog seal of approval. The other major variant is actually a refit on a specific Clint 2C chassis for use during the Solaris 7 Royal Fantasy Tournament held in 3146. The theme of the event was for mechs and battle armor to take on the persona of classic fantasy characters. Entered by the Team Rebel Alliance stable and piloted by Carolyn Fisher, the Clint 2C, named Leia, was a significant retrofit from the original design. The most notable departure from the design was the removal of jump jets to make room for additional weaponry. While this of course makes the mech much more directly dangerous, the cost in agility is significant. At least it could still run for its 9 hexes. The LB-10X was pulled from the mech's right arm, and in its place a large variable speed pulse laser was installed. The LVSP laser can reach out to 15 hexes and does a variable amount of damage based upon range. 7 at the longest range, 9 at the medium, and 11 at close. It also provides an accuracy boost that is also range dependent. -3 to hit at short range, -2 at medium range, and a -1 in the longest range bracket. Backing up the large VSP laser are a couple of Clan ER medium lasers located in the left and center torsos, and a medium re-engineered laser in the left arm. The The ER medium lasers are always solid. They're hitting out to 15 hexes, and the re-engineered laser can punch out to 9 hexes for 6 damage. The last addition is a targeting computer in the left torso, which aids all the weapons with that precious -1 to hit on your rolls. The Mech's 10 double heat sinks can't cover for the Alpha Strike with an energy-heavy loadout like that, so its Mechwarrior needs to be judicious when firing. The last little quirk of this version is the 9.5 tons of ballistics reinforced armor plating, which provides additional protection against autocannons and missile weaponry. It's the other side of the coin from the more common reflective armor we've seen covered on this channel. Overall, the Clint 2C Leia looks like a fun brawling battlemech that would do well in fights on Solaris 7. It's nice to have a quirky option that's not so quirky that it becomes unusable except for a very specific context. It would absolutely do well in a general battle environment. The future of the Clint 2C is a bit up in the air at this point. Knowing that Catalyst painted themselves into a little bit of a corner in the IIC Clan era clan mech production, being overwhelmingly dominated by Clan Seafox, I'd like to see the Clint 2C find a new life among the Raven Alliance. It would fit well with the current battlemech lines, and it makes sense that the Ravens would find purpose for the old 2C in the same way that they brought back the Stinger 2C. The existing art is solid, and seeing it get the CGL treatment would be awesome. Now, before we wrap things up, I did take a crack at creating a mech frog version of the Clint 2C, keeping in mind my previous comment about the 2 official versions working well together. I wanted to create a third mech that could build on that teamwork in a star. I kept the hardware from the original intact, except for an upgrade to the 10 double heat sinks and bringing it up to 8 tons of armor. The weaponry is a combination of medium and close range options with a general focus on clearing out infantry, battle armor, and light vehicles. The 2 AP Gauss rifles in the right arm can cause significant damage to those units, as well as the 4 standard machine guns in the left arm when things get really intimate. To contribute in mech-to-mech combat, the 4 medium pulse lasers split evenly between left and right torso can cause a significant amount of damage and make people think twice about closing in. Finally, an ER medium laser completes the build. It's not quite heat neutral, but with a measured use of that ER medium laser, you can keep things under control. I think the Clint 2C MF would be a nasty little surprise for light mechs and infantry that wander too close to its scouting star. What do you think? So why do we love the Clint 2C? Besides the ever-present desire to root for the underdog, the Clint 2C is a solid 40-ton mech with a couple of variants that each have their role and can work well together or in concert with other lights and medium mechs. It's fast and agile, and everything you didn't know existed on the Clint platform. What's not to love? Thanks for coming out today to talk some BattleTech. Do remember to hit all the buttons if you felt the video was worthy and want to see more. Extra thanks to channel members who go that extra amazing step to directly support the channel so that I can keep the nonsense flowing. I really do appreciate it. Until next time, take care and go make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.